Hey guys, Bike here, and I'm back again with another Last Epoch build guide video. This one is for the Paladin. I'm calling this one Machine Gun Smite. It is strong, guys. The gameplay that you are watching in the background right now is at Corruption 1143. Yes, it's basically 1150. It is so strong and tanky. This is probably one of the tankiest builds I've ever put together, and this was a group effort between myself and the chat. I came up with the idea, and just over the course of a week we were working on it, where people were throwing out ideas, I was implementing them, I was dragging my feet on some of them, but nonetheless, it's come to this. And guys, this build, it's not over yet. Like, I'm putting this build guide out because I will get people who be stopping by the live streams like, hey, you got a link to this? And I'd give them a planner, and then like the next day it would change, or later that day it would change. Speaking of planners, there is a link in the description down below. If you're just here for the planner, it's right there. Go on, do with it what you will. I'm probably going to keep working on this, guys. I'm not going to lie. Also, in the description down below, there is a link to a loot filter. It's pretty basic. It's pretty strict, but it should get you going in the right direction. Feel free to add on to it and customize it the way that you would like. Okay, guys, let's talk about this some more. So yeah, we're using Smite, we're using Healing Hands, we're using Polaris, we're guys, it's tanky. You can just sit here and face tank certain enemies. I mean, obviously at Corruption 1143, you can potentially get one shot for a life-based build. Now you might be going, Bike, what do you mean life-based? I see ward. Yes, we do have some ward. No, we are not using the Healing Hands percent current health loss per whatever from cycle 1.0. We are just using a good old-fashioned Twisted Heart, and we are trying to crank the speed up as high as possible. And that is how we are able to get this sort of interaction right here. This is how we're able to get the speed. That's how I can call this Machine Gun Smite. And guys, there's more to this, right? I was looking at it today when I was getting ready to record this video, and I'm like, oh dude, I could take this into that, and so I might continue working on this. I also want to develop like a lightning variant. There's just so much to this, but I'm just rambling here. Let's go on to the bosses. Here's Raye. I've been using Raye in pretty much all of my build guides, and I don't see a point in changing. Simply because it gives, something to compare to my past build guides, and we are literally just sitting here shredding on him and tanking his hits. You guys have seen some of my other build guides, some of my very successful builds, and I have to dodge these hits even at lower corruption with Sentinel. Here I am able to sit here and take it to the chin. It is the same story for the Harbinger. Moving on to the Harbinger. This is, again, Corruption 1143. We're able to sit here and tank his hits. The only hits we can't tank is when he puts down like that little black hole. That little black hole is what will do me in, so to speak. But even then, I can tank some of that. I can get by with it. It's fine. Yeah. And last but not least, let's look at Aberoth. Aberoth is getting shredded pretty well. If you're interested in seeing the full Aberoth fight, there will be a link in the description down below. Or maybe you're here from the Aberoth fight video. If so, welcome on in. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the game. All right, here we are in game. Let me give you a quick demonstration. So we're gonna burn down our mana, all right, and we're gonna use sigils to burn it down, and we're gonna attack the statue. That's a lot of hits, chat. It's a lot of hits. Now we don't have 100%. We do not have 100% crit chance, but we have enough. We have enough. So let's go ahead and talk about the gear. So let's start with Devotion. So I slam this with T7 mana and spell damage. If you don't know about Devotion, you get 1% cast speed with Smite per 2% missing mana. And then on top of it, you get flat spell damage per flat 5 missing mana. So you can have whatever amount of mana you want with the cast speed, but the real benefit to this item comes from this flat spell damage you gain per 5 missing mana. So when you're really low on the mana, if you have a lot, like 800, 900, 1,000, you're going to be getting a lot of flat spell damage for Smite. Top of it gives us endurance, healing effectiveness. This is a fire build, but if you're doing lightning, you get lightning damage and lightning pin. Don't do lightning with this particular build because it's tuned for fire damage. Leonines is a great helm to have. You're probably going to be hard pressed to get strength in attunement like T7, T6, but try and get a T7 to one and then craft a T5 or the other. And depending on which one you want, strength is going to give you an immediate benefit if you're using a Bastion of Honor, but otherwise go for attunement. Let's talk about, well, hold up. Before we get into Polaris, another reason why you'd want to use Leonines, the reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes. We got 84% on this. This is our only source of critical strike reduction. And on top of it, it gives us 550 armor. You could use a Calamity if you wanted, slammed with affixes like this, but you're going to be missing out on the armor. You will get more damage. You will get more fire spell cast speed, but I do, in the end, recommend Leonines. Let's move on to Polaris. So shout out to Niche and Kaiserin and basically everybody else in the chat who was trying to convince me to use a Polaris, because originally I was using a Crystal Wand. T7 cast speed, chance to slow, chance to ignite, fire damage. It gives you mana, it gives you spell damage. It is great to use this, but Polaris has a base attack speed of 1.16, and if you take Blade Master, which gives us 30% sword attack and cast speed, cast speed if you're using a sword, with the base attack rate, it is on par, if not faster, than T7 cast speed on a normal wand, which has the normal base attack rate. On top of it, you get all the benefits. So I got pretty lucky with this one. Mana, spell damage, chance to shred armor, but the main one you're going to want is spell damage. We also gain flat melee damage per 2 attunement, which helps, but we're mostly a spell build. We do a little melee. I'll go over that in a second. We also do flat spell damage per 2 strength. Now that's more useful, right? So right now we have 62 strength. That's 31 flat spell damage, slammed with 49 flat spell damage. As far as I'm aware of, the affix, I believe it's the spell damage affix does not drop for wands. It only drops for swords. I don't think it drops for axes. I think it's just swords. So yeah, with a Polaris, you can get a lot of flat to go with your Devotion. Yeah, we got a ton of flat damage. We got a ton of flat spell damage in this build. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. And the chance to shred armor on hit helps a lot because I don't have it on the idols. I don't have it on the gloves. It's very good. On top of that, we get a chance to cast Smite on melee hit. And we get a chance to cast Smite at 2 additional targets when we're casting it directly. So I teased it a little bit ago. I said we're doing a little bit of melee. And you might be going, well, what do you mean? This is a spell build, right? Yes, it's a spell build. But we're also doing melee. The reason why is we're doing melee to proc the chance to cast Smite on melee hit. You notice it doesn't say on direct hit. It just says on melee hit. So how would we proc melee while casting Smite? I didn't think of it. This is a shout out to Kaiserin. Kaiserin, thank you so much for this suggestion. It has helped immensely. Let's go over to the skills. We convert Healing Hands into a melee attack. So when I'm casting Smite, you notice like that little right there, that little orange beam, that's actually Healing Hands. That's Healing Hands, right? And you notice I'm proccing a decent amount of Smites, right? This is not too bad. But that's because Healing Hands isn't hitting anything. Now let's move up and hit. It's more Smites. It's definitely more Smites. I mean, it's okay, but we're not hitting anything with Healing Hands yet. Now we move up for the kill. Definitely more Smites. Because we're proccing it through Polaris. This is a great sword, guys. So yeah. Even though there is range with this build, you're going to want to be playing it in close. So let's talk about our sources of damage reduction. Well, actually, first, just to help me out, before we talk about this, I want to make sure that we talk about Champions Regalia. Get yourself Champions Regalia. I would, if you're going the Red Rain route, I would recommend Attunement. It gives us damage, and it's a stat. It's a attribute. So it gives us mana. It gives us % damage, and it's an attribute, so it helps scale Red Rain. If you're not using this, you can try just using flat mana. I didn't try it. I wanted Attunement. But yeah, this is not even min-max yet. So mana, Attunement, % health, and dodge rating. We actually do use the dodge rating. Shout out to Niche. We'll go over that in a moment. So yeah, this is Champions Regalia. Okay, let's talk about these two, and then we will talk about these two. This is for myself. Okay. So Bastion of Honor gives us health, mana, and if you're stacking the strength, 62 strength in this case for me, that's 62% block chance against enemies within 4 meters. Good. So because of that, I was able to get enough block chance elsewhere. 42, 62. That's 104%. 104% block chance. So since we already have 100% block chance, and we don't need it elsewhere, and we don't need to put it on the shield, I put reduced damage taken on block. You could go block effectiveness. Absolutely fine. But we can get block effectiveness elsewhere. We could even get the hybrid affix for the reins and the gloves and the blessing if we wanted to. But because we were able to pick it up elsewhere, since we're able to pick up block effectiveness elsewhere, I opted for reduced damage taken on block because as a Sentinel, at least at this point in the game, we don't have a lot of sources of damage reduction. I give you Bastion of Honor with reduced damage taken on block. Let's talk about Red Ring of Atlaria. You don't need a Red Ring. It does help. It helps out a lot. It gives us all res. It gives us dodge rating. The mana regions, whatever. The health regions, whatever. But the 10% less damage taken if you have at least 180 total attributes, that is great for when you're pushing into the 8, 9, 1000 corruption. It helps out a lot. You can get by without it for sure. Red Ring is not mandatory. You can take another Ashes of Mortality. You can take another one of these. It gives you ward retention, cast speed, fire damage, and you can throw whatever you want on there. But Red Ring is just a nice feeling. You could actually run 2 Red Rings. That might end up being the play if I want to try and take this build and push it into like the 1500 levels of corruption, right? Like I might have to run both Red Rings to go with this Bastion of Honor, but Ashes of Mortality is fun. Plus, I found a couple 2LP versions of this, so I might be messing with that. The build is not done, guys. I'm just putting it out there right now. Okay, so let's talk about... So that's Red Ring. You don't need a Red Ring. You can use whatever ring you want, but Red Ring does help when you start as a primarily life-based build. Our only source of ward is coming from Twisted Heart. As a primarily life-based build, this helps out a lot. Moving on to immolators. So immolators, I got super lucky. I was able to get hybrid health with a belt that has 100% chance to ignite yourself on hit. This puts the machine gun in machine gun smite. So you might be thinking we want the 100% chance to ignite yourself when you use a fire necrotic skill because we want that flat spell damage. It's nice, but at most we have 10 stacks of ignite on ourselves. At most. What I want is the chance to gain frenzy for 2 seconds when you directly use a fire necrotic skill per stack of ignite. This is where this comes in. All right, so let's take this off. So we attack pretty quick. Don't get me wrong. We attack pretty freaking quick. Now let's put it back on. Now we're building up ignite. Now we're starting to gain frenzy. It's almost hard to tell, but we're proccing more smites. Let's see if we can't show it off over here. All right. You know, it's pretty quick. Now let's put it back on. It helps. I know it may not seem like it, but it may not seem like it. It does help. There is a difference. The frenzy is a huge boost. Believe me. Trust me on this one. But if you don't want to use an emmulators or you don't have a good one, any Praetorian build will help. Throw on your healths. You're good to go. I got so lucky with this one. I wanted the 100% chance to ignite yourself when you use a fire necrotic skill, and I slapped hybrid health on there, and I got super lucky with that too. Max hybrid health. Just pure luck. You get this from the Soulfire Bastion. Same with Ashes of Mortality. You're going for the cast speed and the fire damage mostly, the ward retentions, whatever. It's nice, but you mostly want cast speed. And I slammed it with T7 Attunement. I actually found a couple 2LP versions of this, so I might be, improving the build in that way. Like I said, the build is not done. I'm just putting it out there now because people have been asking for it. Take it. There's more to learn here. My mind was already going off thinking about I could use that into that. It's fun. Eternal Gauntlets, best in slot in my opinion. You can go elsewhere, but Eternal Gauntlets, you're going to get that armor mitigation. Also applies to damage over time. Same with the Champion's Regalia. I mean, if you want more cast speed, like I said with the Calamity, you can use a Dark Shroud of Cinders for fire spell cast speed in regards to Champion Regalia, but for the most part, you're going to want Champion Regalia for the armor, and armor mitigation also applies to dots. Same thing when it comes to the Eternal Gauntlets. Now, if you know how to use your... let's talk about this real quick. If you know how to use your Glyphs of Insight, there's a calculator out there from Tunk Labs. You can calculate and you can put even more armor mitigation. Also applies to dots, and then you can seal it. I personally feel like I haven't come up with too many good pairs of gloves when I found T7 cast speed on it, simply because I run out of forging potential, but you could add even more dot mitigation to the build. Excuse me, I need to drink something. You can add even more dot mitigation to the build through that, but let's set that aside for now. Let's talk about what you need. You need mana, cast speed, and then health is good. If you don't have chance to shred armor on your idols or your weapon, and assuming you you only have a 1 LP devotion and you put your T7 mana on there, I would recommend chance to shred armor on your gloves. But if you have your chance to shred armor taken care of, take health. Foot of the mountain. This helps take care of a lot of our endurance. It also gives us plus 11 to all attributes, which helps with the red ring. Also, while we stand still, we gain 1 stack of mountain's endurance. Per stack, up to 3 times. Per stack gives us minus mana costs. But here's the kicker. 100% of dodge rating is converted to endurance threshold while you have at least 1 stack of mountain's endurance. So, dodge rating. So we're moving, our endurance threshold is 673. We stand still, immediately goes up to 890. While moving, we have, at least in this area, this is not a level 100 area, we have 14% dodge chance. Whatever. Stand still, bam, dodge chance gone, 890. We're going to use our sigils, 1010, 1010. We're going to use volatile reversal. 1,561. Only lasts while VR's on cooldown, but if you're constantly using volatile reversal and you're standing still, that's an extra 551 dodge rating. That's being converted to endurance threshold. That's like half our health. On top of it, we're gaining a decent amount of ward with Twisted Heart. Let's talk about Twisted Heart. So, yeah, that's Foot of the Mountain. You're going to want T7 movement speed and health are highly desirable affixes on here. If you need a resistance, I mean, you're probably going to be good at this point because Red Ring. But nonetheless. All right, let's talk about Twisted Heart. So, +3 to Smite. 8% of current health converted to ward when you cast an elemental spell. +1 to all elemental spells. +10 strength. 10 to 16% cast speed and increased health. This is a great relic to have, just from a defensive standpoint. I believe this actually caught a couple nerfs. It used to give, I think up to 12% of current health converted to ward, which for a build like this where we have 3,000 health, this is pretty insane in the membrane. So, yeah, like I said, we are a health build, but we are utilizing Twisted Heart to give us some ward. I think it's enough. I treat it kind of like I treat it, the idea is I treat it like we're over healing ourselves, right? Healing Hands is healing us enough where the amount of health we're missing is negligible, and then on top of it, so we got 3,000 health with anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 ward. That's a lot of effective health, which, especially when you burn down your mana, even when you burn down your mana for this, and you get even more interactions, you got your frenzy going off, bro, that's more ward. That's more effective health. In this case, offense is the best defense if you're using a Twisted Heart. And we could do better. You would obviously want 16 strength. You'd obviously want cast speed. But when I'm looking for a Twisted Heart, what I'm looking for is the percent health. I'm pointing at the screen as if you could see it, but I'm looking for the percent health and the 8%. The 8% is, I don't know. Unless it's like a 2LP, I wouldn't consider anything under 8%. I did have a couple 2LP Twisted Hearts that I slammed, and a little piece of my soul died when I missed the +4 smite on both of them. Oh, man, it hurt. Oh, it hurt, chat, for sure. Okay. That is the gear. Let's move on to the idols. So we have Trinity of Flames. You might have noticed when I was showing off my gear, we didn't have any sort of spell critical strike chance. The reason why is we're using Trinity of Flames. Every third fire spell you cast is guaranteed to crit. So originally what I was doing with this, we were actually getting more crits before. So I was using Healing Hands as a spell with Smite. And that was proccing way more crits, but my damage was all over the place because the crit goes to the third spell. So sometimes that'd be the healing hand, sometimes as a spell, sometimes that would be the smite as a spell, and obviously we're more geared towards smite doing a lot more damage. So every third spell with the crit, sometimes with the healing hand, sometimes with the smite, so sometimes you would see like 5,000 crit, and then it would go by, and then you would see 40,000 crit, and then it'd be back. It'd be kind of all over the place. By converting healing hands to a melee attack, we're doing less crits, but we're guaranteeing that every crit's going to be a smite. This is nice. This is a nice little dump thing. I think it's fine. You could restructure the build to do more crits. We could use, since we're already getting a lot. I don't think we have any. Yeah, we're not using leech at all. So you could use a peak or no face. No, yeah, it's a peak of the mountain, right? So you could use a peak of the mountain. And probably take something like Holy Precision here. At which point I'd probably say if you're not going to be using this and you still want to use the Soulfire Bastion and you don't care about the Soulfire Bastion stuff, you can probably convert this to a lightning thing. I might check that out. Take this off, put this on, take these off, convert this over to lightning. Because otherwise it would just fit just fine. This is pretty universal. We'd have to get strength and attunement onto. I would have to farm like a 4 LP peak or something like that. But we could convert this over and we can convert this over and try out lightning. So. But nonetheless, you can throw something like this on, take this off, and then try again. So we're not going to have the guarantees anymore. Honestly, it's actually not too bad. Okay, well, we can go over it. We can go over it at a different point. There's a couple things I can throw on there. But for right now, you don't have to use this, but this kind of helps the build, allowing us to stack all this great stuff, right? We're able to stack all this awesome stuff because Trinity of Flames exists. That was the whole reason why I started the build to begin with, Trinity of Flames. So Trinity of Flames paired with Throne of Ambition gives you more fire damage per stack of ambition. And then the only other idol we're using is Smite and Block Effectiveness, right? Smite and Block Effectiveness. If you need Armor Shred and you don't want to put it on your gloves and you don't want to put it on your sword, sorry, I'm kind of ill prepared at this point. There is, okay, so I guess you could, since we're doing melee now, you could do that, but this is probably what you want. Just in case you're hitting an enemy that's outside of Healing Hand's armor shred radius, you can get yourself, they're exactly the same anyway. Smite and Chance to Shred armor on hit with fire skills. This could be something that you could use to help shred some armor, but since I already have all this, I took Block Effectiveness, and that's what I would recommend. Throne of Ambition gives us more fire damage. This is great. More armor, more fire damage. This is awesome. Getting to use both of these unique idols in the same build, I think is pretty nice. So that is the idols. Let's move on into the blessings. So I have unique drop rate. Honestly, this is a level 100 character, so you'd probably want to run XP, but gold might also not be a half bad thing. Honestly, I'm probably going to take that off. This is a holdover. This is a holdover from when this character was in beta. This is my first Paladin I ever made anyway. I mean, the character. This is not the first build. This is the first Paladin. Here, you can take whatever you want, but rings are not too bad. Here, take whatever you want. I got one-handed axes. I'd probably throw on one-handed swords. It's probably a better idea. Prefix shard drop rate. That's usually what I take in this, but take whatever you want. And then up here, I chose class-specific shard rates, but take whatever you want. All right, let's talk about the good stuff. So in the Black Sun, highly recommend you take Critical Strike Multiplier. For Ending the Storm, highly recommend you take mana. That's a lot of mana. Highly recommend mana. For Reign of Dragons, I don't recommend going Critical Strike Avoidance. You could, if that's the route you want to go. Yeah, you could. If that's the route you want to go, you could go Critical Strike Avoidance and then use a ring. Paladins are actually pretty good with this. You can put points into Faith Armor as a defensive option, and you can gain, if you have like a 70% Critical Strike Avoidance, you can put Critical Strike Avoidance into Faith Armor if you don't want to put it on a ring, and then bam, you can get 100% Critical Strike Avoidance. But I'm going to recommend that you run all res. Nonetheless, those are some options. Spirits of Fire, I'm running Chance to Shred Fire Resistance. We can get a better one here, but if you're doing all right with your fire shreds, you can take armor. And then Age of Winter, we have the block chance of block effectiveness. I highly recommend that, but if you're good off of that, you can take percent armor. But we got a lot of armor already. All right, enough of that. Let's talk about the skills. So I already showed you guys that we converted Seraph Blade into a melee attack, but let's show you the whole process. So we're going to take 4 points in the hand of Aurelis to give us a 100% chance to cast Smite. Cast Healing Hands when we cast Smite. I took one hand into Divine Barrier, not because we're using it, but not because we're using it, but we can get down to Prayer of the Fallen and Urgent Healing. This gives us some upfront healing and healing effectiveness. 1 point in the Searing Light, we deal fire damage on hit. Bane of Evil, spell damage per 20% healing effectiveness. We are stacking some. You could take a point out of here if you want. Halted Scourge. Healing Hands immobilizes void enemies for 1 second, and you deal more damage to them. And this also gives you a damage reduction from void. Same for Turn Undead. This gives us a damage reduction for necrotic damage taken. These are both highly important just for that. The damage is cool, but I mean, we're doing Smite for that. The damage reduction is nice. Cleric's Wrath for damage per level of specialized buff skills. This is a damage multiplier. I never really only skills with the buff tag. So that's a buff. That's a buff. This is not a buff. Okay. So you gain 1% damage per level of specialized buff skills. Per level. So 20%. 20%. 20. Oh, that's actually a decent amount of damage. Honestly, in the end, though, just to show you, like, I know we have it converted into a melee attack. It's still not doing, like, amazing. Honestly, it's doing good damage because it procs Smite, you know? That's where it comes from. All right, let's get back to it. Okay, so I guess I'm just figuring that out right now. Per buff, yeah. Sorry, you guys are discovering something new with me. In the moment. Virtue of Patience, I just put 1 point here to get over to here. You could take 1 point out here to put it here, but you're taking from damage to give to damage. That's cool. That's cool. And Seraph Blade deals fire damage on hit. That's what we mostly need right here. We wanted to convert it into a melee hit just so we could proc more smites from Palaris. All right, let's talk about Smite. So I was looking at this before going live, before recording this video, and I was already thinking about how we could tune this. So let me tell you what I'm thinking. I'm shipping this as is because this is what I've been using the entire time, but obviously I didn't really discuss it, but obviously we would want +4 to smite on Twisted Heart. Unfortunately, we only got 3, but obviously you want +4 to give you that extra level. On top of it, you might be all right taking out the 3 points here, putting them into Blinding Flash, and maybe even taking out a couple points here and putting them into Blinding Flash to give you even more, another more damage multiplier. The reason why I didn't take this is you do more damage to enemies that are blinded, so you got to wait for them to get the blinded condition and then you do the more damage. And I was thinking go for the for sure damage, but yeah, so what this does right here, what Atonement does is it reduces the health cost of Sacrifice. I wanted to try and keep my health up as high as possible because we're constantly losing health for Twisted Heart. That's why I wanted to make sure I'm not paying any additional costs. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong one again. Excuse me, I'm gonna have to take a drink for Sacrifice. Yeah, so I didn't want to have to pay anything else for Sacrifice health costs. But if you're in a good enough position, take some points out of Atonement and put it elsewhere for damage. Give it a shot. But yeah, let's talk about this real quick. 3 points in Pillars of Light, because since we're directly casting, that's a 36% chance to double cast. 3 points into Holy Fire to put 5 points into Conflagration. We do 100% hit damage versus ignited enemies. Also, we put 3 points into Deep Impact for that critical strike multiplier. 5 points into Sacrifice for 250% more damage with Smite, but it consumes health. And then 5 points to remove the health costs. Mess around with this. See what you can get. I'm trying to speed this up. I just looked at how long this video is going to be. It's going to be long. I ramble. Sorry, guys. Holy Aura. Put as many points as you need into Shelter from the Storm to get that Elemental and Endurance. But once you're in a good spot, you can even take points out. Like I said, just put as many points as you need into here so you can put it into damage and other good stuff. Vital Boon. The thing is, I need the poison resistance, but it also cleanses ailments when we use Holy Aura. Obviously, we're trying to stack Ignite on ourselves. You can see over there in the corner, we're trying to stack that. And when I use Holy Aura, it cleanses it. It sucks, but right now I need the poison resistance. So I might clean up the build in the future. This is what I've been playing for pretty much the entire time. So I'm just shipping this as is. 3 points into Redemption for healing effectiveness. It helps boost the healing of Healing Hands as well as a little bit of the damage. 2 points into Raya's Devotion to give us to allow us access to Fanaticism. This gives us increased attack speed and cast speed. Fire Pin. We're able to put 2 points into Raya's Fury for 10% Fire Pin. And then 5 points into Burning Blows for increased global fire damage. Moving on. So I put 3 points into Invigorate just for the healing effectiveness, just to kind of boost the healing potential of both Smite and Healing Hands since we're not leeching, but you don't need to put it there. You could put it into Decree of Flame. You can put it into Iron Sigils for more endurance threshold per sigil. That could be a good pickup right there. Yeah, so 4 points for damage per sigil. So right now we got 80% damage because we're casting 4 sigils, 20% per damage per sigil. 2 points into Word of Alacrity for cast speed. This is what helps us burn it down so fast. Without it, like we burn it down, but it makes it feel so much better to take Word of Alacrity. But if you were in a good enough spot and you feel like you don't need this, take it out, put it somewhere else. But for me personally, I like just the way it feels. Yeah, moving on. Iron Sigils for the endurance threshold, healing effectiveness, enduring hope to get us to tetragram and meditation. This gives us our sigils last longer. Tetragram maximum sigils. You could use the ring if you wanted to, but I don't recommend, since we're constantly using the sigils to burn down our mana anyway. Most of the time we have the buff kept up manually. Meditation gives us... Meditation is just so we can get to Sign of the Guardian, block chance per active sigil. And then Volatile Reversal. This is my main setup most of the time, except I put 3 points into dodge rating while on cooldown. I showed that earlier. Shout out to Niche for this idea, in case I didn't do that. Sorry, guys. And yeah, it's actually a great idea. It's actually a fantastic idea to to use the dodge rating while on cooldown, because then we're converting it and we have just that much more endurance threshold. Okay, that is enough for the skills. Sorry, guys. I rambled. We're almost there. The passive tree. Okay, let's go over this pretty quick. I put 8 points into Juggernaut. I needed the Void Resistance. Also, the Strength is a nice touch. 4 points into Fearless for Vitality and Health Regen. 1 point into Stalwart for the 3% block chance. Excuse me. Armor Clad. 10% damage reduction from nearby enemies. 5 points into Valiant Charge for increased cooldown recovery speed for movement skills. Volatile Reversal is a movement skill. 2 points into Time and Faith. Put as many points as you want here. This is just enough right here. I get the damage gain to help with the health gain to help with Twisted Heart. And the mana is just enough to where I'm not going into negatives constantly, but I'm also not generating way too much. Makes sense? You gotta find your own, like, based off of your gear, based off of your mana regen, whatever you gotta find your own course of action here on this. Moving on. Blade Master. We went over this a little bit earlier. Sword attack and cast speed 30%. Highly recommend if you're using Polaris. All right, I put only 5 points into Abyssal Endurance, into the Void Knight tree to get Volatile Reversal. I originally did have 11 points because I was getting Void Corruption and I was benefiting from the physical resistance here. But yesterday, another late night change. Fia Lapise, friend of the channel and fellow content creator for Last Epoch, he stopped by and he recommended, because he saw me getting melted by dots at 1100 corruption. He was like, hey, how about you take Iron Attunement, because you already have a ton of attunement. So with 5 points into Iron Attunement, a portion of your armor mitigation percentage applies to damage over time taken per 2 points of attunement. So we have 80 points of attunement. So per 2 points of attunement, we have 1% damage over time armor mitigation. That's 40% armor mitigation from here. To go with 21% and 16%. We're actually pretty tanky against dots. It helps. But if you are not, I repeat, if you are not farming at that high of corruption, this didn't really, I'm not even going to say this is necessary. It just comes down to skill issue. But if you, this was nicer at higher levels of corruption. This right here, like at 1000 plus, this started feeling, I'm not going to say mandatory, but like, oh, that helps out a lot. But if you are farming at lower corruption, just take Light of Ra. Yeah, you get movement speed, you get fire damage, you get lightning damage. The thing is, from where this build started to where it is now, it went from being kind of running around, doing that, to doing this. Shield charge or shield rush. Stand in front of the enemy, making sure our mana's burned down low. Right? And then doing just this. Just like burning down an enemy. Okay, cool. Then doing this. Compared to where it was. So since we're using unspec shield rush here, I don't think I mentioned that. This is unspec. You don't need to have healing hands on here. Unspec shield rush. Since we're using this is enough of a movement speed bump for me that, yeah, I'm just able to keep going on. Okay. So, I'm sorry, I kind of spaced out there for a second. So, based off of where we started with the build, Light of Raya is not as mandatory because based off the higher corruption where we're at, we want to be standing still when we're spamming the smites. So having something like this helps in case we get hit by some dots. That way we can continue to stand still and have the endurance threshold that is provided to us from Foot of the Mountain. There we go. I can speak. Sorry. It's been kind of a long, not a long day, but I've been sitting here working on the video for a little while. And I think it's coming across on the recording, so I do apologize. So let's go over this again. So we have all this. Let's go over the Forge Guard because I jumped ahead to explain Iron Attunement, but let's break it down. I needed physical resistance, so I was able to get 20% physical resistance and 30% armor when we're hit. But the physical resistance just sticks around. Right? So I was able to pick up the 20% physical resistance that I needed. Steel Aegis. Armor and block effectiveness, we wanted the 3% block chance. Right now, the way the build is set up, I actually probably don't need to use this. I can remove it, but since it gives block effectiveness, I'm keeping it. It's fine. We don't always, at any given point, have all 4 sigils up, so it's fine to have a little overage on our block chance, but nonetheless, there you go. If you want to take it out, put it into Unflinching. Unflinching gives us health and stun avoidance. It's nice. Guardian gives us health and stun chance and health regen. It's nice. Like I say, you can take 3 points out here, put them up there in Unflinching. You're off to the races. 5 points into Iron Attunement. It gives us attunement, armor, and then, as I said earlier, damage over time mitigation from armor per 2 attunement, 1% per 2 attunement. That's, yeah. Moving on. I'm rambling. Sorry. Conviction. I put 8 points here for fire, for the fire and lightning. The fire damage is okay. It's the fire pin that I'm looking for. Also, Defiance, Attunement, and Elemental Resistance. The Attunement's nice. I needed the Elemental Resistance. If you don't need this, take the points out. Honor. You are less likely to be stunned. You have a higher chance to block hits, and you take less damage from hits that you have blocked. Excuse me. I took this for the block chance, but also to give us access to Heaven Fire. We have 30 flat spell damage with a shield. Very nice. Put 5 points into Valor. I would prefer more, but I pulled points out of here to take this. I think this is still good the way I have it set up. So 5 points into Valor. Gives us health, healing effectiveness. Very nice. Holy Icon gives us healing effectiveness, necrotic resistance, and health. I needed the necrotic resistance. 8 points into Sanctuary. Guardian gives us even more flat spell damage with a shield and armor while using a shield. 400. Very nice. 1 point into Divine Essence. And we're not taking Shield Wall because we want the chance to dodge. Do not take Shield Wall if you're using this and you're trying to get the whole dodge endurance threshold thing. One point into Divine Essence. You have a chance to be granted a Divine Essence when you heal yourself or an ally. Divine Essences last 10 seconds and grant 10% increased armor and healing effectiveness. And reduce the duration of stun. Just 1 point here. Whenever we heal ourselves, which we're constantly healing ourselves with that 6% chance, you're going to have 3 stacks of this up almost all the time. Just for extra armor, extra healing effectiveness, and reduced duration of stuns on us. It's very nice. 12 points into Reverence of Duality. Increased health, increased damage, increased healing effectiveness, and increased mana. All right, guys, that is the build. This was a long one. I'm sorry it took so long, guys. I just caught myself rambling. I'm not going to lie, guys. This is like the third time recording this. I know I could just probably record this by sections, but it's not really me. I just like to go off on one long tangent, and this one took a while. And yeah, so I hope you guys found this interesting. This build is not over. I was already thinking, hey, what if we started using Divine Bolt and we took 1 point into Divine Bolt? When we hit an enemy with a melee attack, guess what? We're using melee with Healing Hands. And then we messed with Healing Hands. We took out the healing portions. We can just take this out, put them over here, put it all into Divine Bolt, and then, yeah, dude. There's more to the build. There's more to the build. It's not over yet, but I'm gonna keep messing with it. This is gonna be out there for you guys. Enjoy. I rambled on way too much. Thank you so much for watching. Consider leaving a like if you made it all the way to the end of the video, or subscribing. You guys take care. Peace.